SCP-8947 Fault. We don't often get to see too many examples of groups of Foundation employees demonstrating their intelligence and ingenuity. Sure, we get to see occasional individuals that are markedly brilliant, and we see evidence of the Foundation's technological prowess and capabilities, but it has to take quite the think tank sometimes to contain certain anomalies. In SCP-8947, we see an incredibly complicated and involved anomaly, a cycle of events that occurs every week involving over 250 anomalous entities, and a relatively strict sequence of events that has to go right in order to prevent calamity. The researchers that have worked on and studied this anomaly over the years have so far brilliantly mapped out the complex web of interactions and events here in order to maintain containment. And even still, there's plenty that they don't know and haven't figured out. That doesn't give us much hope as readers, but let's take a look. SCP-8947 is the group designation for any anomalous activity within the abandoned former Spirit Mountain Hotel and Casino near Laughlin, Nevada. Specifically, it refers to its weekly cycle of anomalous activity. Spirit Mountain was once a 8,060 square meter entertainment facility built by billionaire entrepreneur and occultist Alejandro Giuseppe Bianchi Tolliver II in 1911, until it suffered severe structural damage after an earthquake and a fire during a seasonal gala event in 1922, resulting in the deaths of over 230 individuals. Tolliver specifically belonged to an unnamed group of occultists devoted to the research of and subservience to a specific greater demon. In collected texts from his ruined hotel library, this demon is called Pan-Hun and is described as a demon of transfiguration. Service to this demon is now considered an offshoot of neo-Sarkicism. The structure is now inhabited by a number of semi-incorporeal humanoid entities, all of which bear the group designation of 8947-1. When and how these entities can be interacted with is the subject of considerable study, and they are primarily only semi-incorporeal, which means that they can be interacted with physically by non-anomalous human subjects and personnel, but only within reason. If a person were to take an action that would have seemed profoundly unusual during the original period of the original loop, the entities will typically become fully incorporeal and act as if the action never occurred. This has happened before when attempting to push or pull entities with any significant force, as well as if taking lethal action against them. They can be killed throughout the course of the weekly cycle, but only by other 8947-1 entities, or actions that befall them as a result of their own behavior. The entities are gray, mostly featureless, humanoid representations of patrons of the hotel who perished the night of the earthquake. These entities wear unique outfits typical of the 1920s upper class, though these outfits show significant wear and in some cases are barely recognizable as apparel. Each entity has a unique identity and is sentient, as they are capable of speech and are generally self-aware. They will interact with individuals within the structure as if they were fellow patrons of the hotel, but will respond negatively if the individuals are not dressed in period-appropriate clothing and speak using period-appropriate mannerisms. Aside from these interactions, the entities appear to follow a rough pattern of events and try to complete a certain set of actions before the Montazuma 11 event Sunday night. We'll get to that later. While these events typically take place with minor variations, Foundation personnel are able to slightly alter their behavior through conversation and interaction with the instances. Occasionally, large variations can occur, which almost always require immediate intervention from Foundation game strategists to correct the outcome of 8947's activation cycle and prevent a containment breach. After the Montazuma 11 protocol takes place, the entities disappear until they reappear on the next Thursday morning at 8 a.m. While it appears that the entities can recall events from previous cycles, tending to alter their behavior based on the outcomes of past cycles, they typically do not address this, even if asked. SCP-8947-A is a large fissure located in the center of the casino, roughly 28 meters in length and 6 meters across at its widest point, which extends indeterminately deep into the earth below. This fissure is the focus of containment efforts within 8947, as it routinely undergoes activation events, wherein the entities must make a gold offering to the fissure. If the offering is not of a suitable value, a seemingly random amount that has trended upwards since the anomaly's discovery, the fissure will begin to increase in size, resulting in severe tremors and structural damage to the hotel and casino. These activation events can only be terminated by proper fulfillment of the Montazuma 11 protocol, which brings an end to any geological activity and begins a period of inactivity. Current projections indicate that further expansion of the fissure is an inimical threat to the Davis Dam in Laughlin, Nevada, which dams the Colorado River and sits on the southernmost end of Lake Mojave. Previous failed instances of the Montazuma 11 protocol have resulted in significant geological activity that has destabilized the foundation of the dam, and it is likely to cause unrecoverable damage if seismic events continue. The failure of the dam would threaten all persons and structures within the low-lying area of the Mojave Valley, as well as the resorts and riverfront property of Lake Havasu City. Additionally, it could result in a cascading failure of the Parker Dam to the south, which itself would likely cause severe damage and loss of life to multiple towns. Protocols have been developed to mitigate the potential loss of life from a failure of the protocol, but currently no procedures exist that can assure a 100% survival rate of all potentially affected persons in the event of a failure of the dam, as it is currently estimated that a minimum of 110,000 people would have to be evacuated in the span of only a few hours, and it's unlikely that people in the Mojave Valley area could be evacuated in time at all. The hotel and casino comprises 3 primary structures, each linked to the other through a series of hallways and open-air breezeways. The first and largest structure is the hotel, composed of 15 floors with 186 guest staterooms, and the top floor containing a single penthouse and exposed roof access. On the main level of the hotel is a bar, as well as a cocktail lounge and jazz club. To the west of the hotel is the restaurant Nevada, composed of a large dining room, 2 bars, 5 private suites, and a stage for performances. In the back of the restaurant is the kitchen, much of which was destroyed by fire. The primary feature of the restaurant is the Overlook Suite, which extends out over the edge of the mountain. To the southwest of the hotel is the casino, a 5-story ornate structure with an open atrium in the center, once covered by a large glass dome. The casino contains a number of various games of chance, including card tables, roulette, and slot machines. On the main floor of the casino is a caged cashier's desk, through which chips can be exchanged for gold. Over time, due to seismic activity from the fissure and exposure to the elements, the entirety of the establishment has fallen into a state of considerable disrepair. Several areas are no longer easily accessible, or have been destroyed altogether. One room, the penthouse suite, cannot be accessed whatsoever, and attempted access from the exterior with shaped charges, as well as through the roof or through any ductwork, inevitably ends in failure. The hotel seems to exert some sort of anomalous influence on these attempts, as the walls themselves do not appear to be impervious, but rather any tools or implements used when attempting to gain access suddenly and inexplicably fail. Attempts to enter through an exterior window have resulted in 3 personnel falling from their harnesses, and another developing an immediate and acute fear of heights upon reaching the top floor suite. Lastly, the Fissure has made several areas of the casino lower levels inaccessible, and anomalous entities who are directed towards these lower levels, or towards the Fissure in general, will become increasingly upset and agitated, though most are either unable or unwilling to describe why. It is uncertain when the hotel and casino began to display anomalous activity. The fire that broke out was reported in the Los Angeles Times, due to the presence of a Nevada senator at the gala event, but after initial investigations of the structure revealed no immediate foul play, the building was abandoned, likely due to its remote location. In 1962, 2 teenagers filed a police report after seeing what they described as interior lights flickering and a green smog surrounding the structure. Investigators were not able to find any evidence of trespassing at the structure, and the case was abandoned. In 1970, a female motorist claimed to have gotten lost on her way to Lake Havasu City from Las Vegas, and ended up at the Spirit Mountain Casino after dark. The woman claimed to have seen a thick green haze billowing out of the lower levels of the structure, and a single light on the top floor of the hotel, where the silhouette of an individual was visible through the curtains. Additionally, the woman claimed to have heard shouting from within, and to have felt some considerable seismic activity. After seeing what she described as bodies floating in the mist, she fled on foot, eventually being picked up by another passing motorist. Local police discovered her car several miles down the road, nowhere near the gated road leading to the hotel, so the woman's story was dismissed. In 2004, a locally televised ghost hunting program called Demon Hunters gained permission from the state government to access the facility for one night in order to record an episode. The episode never aired, and no member of the production team commented on its absence afterwards. However, an anonymous internet user claiming to be a member of the program's staff posted several times over a 6-month period on an internet message board for the amateur supernatural watchdog group Knights of Truth. In their posts, the user claims that members of the production team were exposed to spectral entities who begged them for gold, salt, and blood, even going so far as attempting to attack one of the hosts. The event apparently shocked the crew so badly that it was decided that the program would not air the footage, which was later destroyed. In 2007, Foundation assets embedded in the local authorities investigated another claim of supernatural activity at the hotel, and were met by the anomalous entities. After deducing the nature and structure of the anomaly, a permanent forward operating base was established outside the structure. Let's move on to discussing Protocol Montazuma 11, which was developed by a joint team of Foundation occultists, game theorists, and historians. It was originally believed that the origin of the fault within 8947 was natural, and it was only the entities that were anomalous. Study of information collected from within the hotel and casino, however, as well as sigils and markings from within the fault itself, led to the conclusion that the fissure was a result of paranatural influence upon the Earth itself, emanating from within the resort. The intended result of Montazuma 11 is to mitigate the final cost in gold to satisfy the conditions of the activation event. This includes subtly guiding the entities into situations and relationships that will be financially lucrative, and making sure wealthy individuals are alive and present for the end of the event on Sunday night. Until the Foundation became involved in the anomaly's containment, it is believed that the success of the Sunday night ritual was entirely up to chance. It was initially believed that the growth of the fissure does not accurately align with the expected growth given the likelihood of a successful outcome on any given week, but this is now believed to be untrue, and further investigation is required. The secondary intention of Montazuma 11 is to further investigate the cause of the anomaly's creation, the origin of which is thus far unknown. The first part of the protocol is in case the entities do not produce enough gold to satisfy the fissure's requirement to prevent its growth. In this case, a ration of gold bullion is provided to Foundation containment personnel to offset the disparity. The incorporeal entities present their accumulated gold to the Fissure on Sunday night at roughly 10:51 p.m., their presentation lasting for 3 minutes and 6 seconds. Once they've finished, there is a 33-second period of inactivity from the Fissure, at which point one of two events will take place. Either the gold will be a sufficient amount, in which case the Fissure will remain inert, all incorporeal elements of 8947 will disappear, and it is safe to end Protocol Montazuma 11, or it will not be sufficient. In this case, tremors beneath the establishment will become increasingly violent, accompanied by a dense, green haze from within the Fissure. The consistency of this haze is inconclusive, but it is inimical to humans, causing severe and immediate lesions across the body wherever it touches. As these lesions intensify, the substance begins to break down body fats and lipids, creating a thick, fatty fluid that begins to seep from the skin. The only deterrent to this substance is salt, which must be applied in a powdered form to the bodies of all individuals participating in the protocol, and protective body suits, which must also be coated in powdered salt beforehand. If this occurs, 3 different events must take place to inhibit the growth of the Fissure. A human child, between ages 4 and 6, must approach the edge of the Fissure with a basket of 10-gram gold bullion bars. The child must be then made to throw individual bars into the Fissure at a rate of 1 bar every 30 seconds until the end of the event. Every time they throw a bar, they must say, "For what we have wagered against our souls, so must we repay in gold." Another similarly aged human child must accompany each gold bar with a handful of salt, thrown out of a burlap bag, while saying, "For how we have festered so long in the darkness, so must we repay in salt." Lastly, a third child must have both of their wrists cut perpendicular to their arm with a blade, although the cuts only need to be deep enough that blood is spilled into the Fissure. An adult human must stand near the child and repeat, "For the innocence we have stolen, so must we repay in blood." Once the discrepancy between the amount of gold required by the Fissure and the amount of gold offered by the entities has been resolved, the tremors will cease, and the green haze will dissipate, ending the protocol. Obviously, this is something the Foundation hopes to avoid doing too often. Each entity corresponds to a different individual who perished the night of the earthquake and fire, with several of them being particularly noteworthy. We're provided a brief list of the more notable entities, as well as an identifier name for each of them to make the timeline clearer to understand. There's the Senator, Dean Blacklock, who attended the gala to curry favor with Tolliver in order to secure funds for his upcoming gubernatorial campaign. There's also the Senator's wife, Wilma Blacklock, who is deeply unhappy with their marriage and only keeps up the charade for appearances. There's the capitalist, Vince Cannon, who owned a major publication in Las Vegas and had previously run several hit pieces on Tolliver before accepting the invite to the gala. The singer, Layla Williams, who was the talented young daughter of a famous jazz singer. The entrepreneur, Benjamin L. Murray, who was the younger brother of the wealthy owner of the Trans-America Railroad. And the heiress, Elizabeth Yates Moore, the wealthy daughter of the founder of Yates Prospecting and wife of the late movie producer Gerald Moore. There's also the district attorney, Winston D. Snyder, and his wife, Irma Snyder, a deeply religious woman, as well as the journalist, Clark Avery, a writer for the New York Times and former Army photographer, who received an invitation through his employer, an old friend of Tolliver. Then there's also the big winner, Heather Jasper, who is notable for winning a jackpot in 99% of all scenarios on opening night. The banker, Vernon Wells, the groundskeeper, Walter Baker, the server, Olivia Phillips, and the chef, Gino Bellucci. In total, 256 individual entities are present within the anomaly. 3 individuals were reported dead but are not found amongst the entities: Alejandro Tolliver, his granddaughter Amelia Fitzwilliams, and an individual listed as A. Shaw, MD. That leads us into the real meat of the article, the timeline of major events that cycles every week from Thursday to Sunday. We're provided an optimized timeline, assuming nothing goes majorly off course. Things start at 8 a.m. on Thursday, as all attendants who begin within 8947 appear spontaneously, immediately beginning their actions for the day. The first guests arrive and are checked in, and the chef and his staff begin to cook lunch. The chef expresses dissatisfaction with his new server, who is late. The groundskeeper meets with the rest of his staff to assign duties for the day, and the server arrives to work, a half-hour late. She attempts to hide from the chef, and is unable to, as he scolds her for her tardiness, threatening to fire her if she's ever late again. The journalist notices this exchange as he passes by. By noon, another 100 guests have arrived, and the hotel manager announces lunch in the grand hall of the hotel. Once inside the grand hall, the patrons take their seats and focus on an empty, raised stage at the front of the room. Based on the attention given to this, it's likely that someone is speaking to the group, who occasionally laugh and clap enthusiastically, but no figure ever appears on the stage. Context implies this figure to be Tolliver. After the individual finishes speaking, the waitstaff serves lunch, and the senator spends the majority of his mealtime moving around the room, shaking hands. His wife leaves halfway through the meal, and her absence is usually followed by the absence of another server, with her following him to a broom closet to have intercourse. Their absence goes unnoticed, but if they are interrupted by someone entering the closet, the server flees and the senator's wife will return to her room for the rest of the day. If she is not present in the casino on the first night, the big winner will not hit her jackpot, the contents of which are required to neutralize a Montazuma 11 event. The banker strikes up a conversation with the entrepreneur about Tolliver's wealth, joined by the district attorney. Notably, the banker appears distressed by the district attorney's presence, and his conversation cannot be interrupted, as it precedes a conversation between the district attorney and the journalist on Saturday night that is required to neutralize a Montazuma 11 event. After being dismissed from lunch, many of the guests leave to go to the casino or the pool. The senator's wife, accompanied by one of the senator's friends' wives, goes to the bar by the pool. The chef spends 10 minutes admonishing his staff for their lax attitude about lunch, and the senator, the capitalist, the banker, and the entrepreneur go to the casino. The groundskeeper goes to the first basement level to put away some gardening equipment, and while down there, discovers a door he had never noticed before. After trying all of his keys on it, he leaves it, confused. If he's followed during this, he will not find the door, and will not later find the small vault, the contents of which are required to efficiently satisfy a Montazuma 11 event. The server, while washing dishes in the kitchen, is visited by the journalist. They speak briefly about her new job and the chef, before the journalist is called away. This conversation is not otherwise notable aside from containing the only single line of repeated dialogue out of every conversation that has been recorded at the Anomaly. While most conversations maintain the same general outcome, the words used are not always consistent, except for here. When the journalist tells her to be careful, and that men like the chef are known to take advantage of young women like her, the server invariably replies with, "He'll bleed before I do." At 8 p.m., the singer performs at the hotel jazz bar, during which she is approached by an intoxicated capitalist, who makes a pass at her. He is accosted by hotel security, who attempt to throw him out of the hotel, but he mustn't be thrown out of the hotel. If he is not present in the hotel on Friday night, he cannot win the game of cards he plays with Tolliver, the winnings of which are required to neutralize a Montezuma 11 event. Additionally, he must be present Saturday night to organize the meeting of the conspirators that is required to even begin a Montezuma 11 event. Foundation personnel must intervene and convince hotel security to allow the capitalist to return to his room. During dinner service, the entrepreneur calls the chef out to his table in an extravagant display of giving appreciation to the chef. During this conversation, which lasts only a few moments, they speak about a potential investment opportunity in a franchise of restaurants. Due to her waiting on a table nearby, the server overhears part of this conversation, which becomes an important prerequisite for the initiation of the Montezuma 11 event. It is possible for her to miss this conversation, which results in her taking the journalist's advice on Sunday morning and not being in the lounge on Sunday night. To avoid this, she must be compelled to linger long enough by the entrepreneur's table in order to hear the conversation between her boss and the entrepreneur. After the capitalist is released to his room, he will occasionally leave later that evening and attempt to seek out the singer. The result of this is irrelevant, so long as he is in the casino the following night. The singer checks into the hotel shortly after 9, during which the senator will pass by on his way to the jazz club and stop to speak with her. This must be dissuaded, because if the two engage in any sexual activity, the senator's wife will later attempt to kill him, and both must be alive in order to properly neutralize a Montezuma 11 event. The singer serves an interesting role in the events of the weekend, as she is the most capable romantic match in terms of ability to produce additional gold from the matched person, seemingly in a bid to impress her. Persons who are matched with her have a tendency to seek out additional wealth, either from their own possession or from the casino, in order to maintain her attention. She is one of the most emotionally compromised major players, and her proclivity for seeking out affection and companionship has at times resulted in tragic incidents, wherein she perished before the end of the weekend, either as a result of aggression from a partner or by her own hand. It's imperative that, regardless of her interactions with other hotel occupants, she be present to sing for Tolliver on Sunday night, as this is a prerequisite to being a Montezuma 11 event. At roughly 9:48 p.m., the senator's wife will enter the casino with another of her friends, the Big Winner. She'll send the Big Winner to get them drinks, and after returning, she'll take a seat next to the senator's wife at the slot machines. After roughly 6 minutes of playing, the Big Winner will hit jackpot. Occasionally, she will attempt to leave the senator's wife and return to her husband in the hotel room, but this cannot be allowed, as her jackpot winnings are required to neutralize a Montezuma 11 event. At the conclusion of dinner service, the journalist seeks out the server again, and the two of them return to the journalist's room. While there, they discuss the chef, and the server expresses frustration about his advances towards her. The journalist offers a ride back to New York at the end of the weekend, while the server tells him she'll keep a knife on her person in case he tries it again. Originally, several attempts were made to forego the activation of the Montezuma 11 event entirely by dissuading her from taking the knife, and convincing her to take romantic interest in the chef, but this did not prevent the activation of the event. If the groundskeeper is paired in some way to the singer, this is the earliest hypothesized point during which he would be able to find the small vault, which contains enough gold bullion itself to usually satisfy at least 20% of the total value. The presence of the small vault is interesting, as its location and the location of its key are not indicative of Tolliver knowing about its existence, especially compared to the secret vault, which is considerably more difficult to get into. How the small vault came to be where it was, who filled it with gold, and why it had not been discovered by the head's groundkeeper for nearly a decade prior to 1922 is all still unknown. It's theorized that the only reason why the groundskeeper being paired with the singer compels him to find the vault so early is because the pairing is such a dramatic and unexpected departure from his expected routine that he shows signs of shock, happening upon the vault door by accident. A door within the penthouse is heard opening and closing several times around this point, and two muffled male voices speak briefly, though inaudibly. This is the only time throughout the weekend that sound can be heard in the penthouse, and while the transliteration of the conversation has proven impossible, many observers have described the voices as sad. If the senator engaged in infidelity earlier in the day, his wife will receive a phone call shortly before they go to sleep. This call is one of the great unknowns within the anomaly, and considering what takes place after receiving the call, it's assumed that the person on the other end is informing her about the infidelity in question. However, throughout repeated observations of the aforementioned coupling, no other persons within the anomaly could have possibly witnessed the event take place. Furthermore, the senator's wife offers no pushback against the allegations, implying that the person on the other end of the line is someone she trusts, or perhaps more likely, someone providing information she was already expecting to hear. These factors have led researchers to further speculate on the nature of this call, with some believing that it must have originated from Tolliver, who may have had ways of gathering information from within the hotel that have either been destroyed or have long since fallen into disrepair, and may have been a person she would have trusted. After taking the phone call, she will leave their room and not return until the morning. If the senator is made aware of his wife's intentions after his infidelity, their room will receive the phone call, but neither of them will be awake to hear it. Answering the phone will find the line open, but the voice of the speaker on the other end is muffled and unintelligible. At midnight, the capitalist spends several hours sitting by a fountain on the hotel grounds, drinking with a small party. While most of the party has moved inside as of 2:45, the capitalist continues to drink outside for another hour, staring up at the penthouse apartment of the hotel. By 8 a.m. Friday morning, if the senator's wife learns about her husband's infidelity and receives the phone call the prior night, she will leave the hotel and return in the morning with a handgun. If she is not intercepted, she will shoot the senator 3 times in the chest and neck, killing him. This cannot be allowed to take place, as the senator must be present at the meetings of the conspirators on Friday and Saturday, as well as present on Sunday to confront Tolliver. In the event that she does kill her husband, no further gold will be collected from the casino's guests, and will need to be produced entirely by Foundation assets during the active stage of the Montazuma 11 event. A letter arrives at the front desk for the journalist, containing details about financial indiscretions on the part of the entrepreneur and the banker. This letter has raised questions about the nature of the journalist's presence during the events prior to Sunday night, as it was originally believed that he was only in attendance due to his employer sending him in his place. The contents of the letter indicate that the journalist may have had contacts within relevant financial and law enforcement sectors who were providing him with information, and he was present at the hotel to follow a lead about a money laundering scheme perpetrated by the banker on behalf of the entrepreneur. The journalist will spend the rest of the morning following the two. The two will become increasingly paranoid if they discover the letter, which usually happens by accident, like if the journalist leaves the letter in his dinner jacket, which is later accidentally given to the banker, and they will take actions to silence the journalist prior to his revealing the nature of their crime to the district attorney. Breakfast is served in the main hall as guests continue to file in, during which an absent individual, similar to Tolliver and believed to be A. Shaw, speaks to the concierge. As is evident by the concierge's comments and addressing the space down and to the right of where A. Shaw would be, it's likely that the figure is accompanied by Amelia Fitzwilliams, Tolliver's young granddaughter. The two are escorted to an elevator, which appears on the top floor sometime later. A. Shaw is believed to leave the hotel roughly 3 hours later. If the groundskeeper is paired with the singer the night before, he typically spends Friday morning exploring the basement level in search of a key to the small vault. The key is located in a small locker on a ledge overlooking the fissure, and while the entities will not yet recognize the fissure's existence, he will still be apprehensive about getting to the locker containing the small vault key. If either the key, the locker, or the groundskeeper fall into the fissure, the small vault and the secret vault will no longer be accessible during the active cycle. Only the small vault is required for the opportune scenario, and while the secret vault does make it significantly easier, it is much more difficult to achieve. For this reason, the groundskeeper must be encouraged to construct a small walkway out of nearby pieces of plywood, as one of the footsteps needed to reach the locker is loose and will fall if not stepped over quickly enough. While the fissure likely did not exist until the final night of the original activation cycle, it is possible for entities to fall into it, after which bystanders will express uncertain fear and anxiety, but cannot explain why they feel this way. Similarly, if entities who fall in are trapped below but not killed by the fall, they will express an apparent horrific existential dread that does not conclude until the end of the activation period. It is unknown why this dread manifests, though it has been speculated that they are now far enough away from the anomalous influence that created them that they become somewhat self-aware, though this awareness has limits, and these entities are in no way capable of rational conversation. The big winner, having won a jackpot the day before, will spend most of the morning and early afternoon listening to the singer in the hotel jazz bar. As the big winner typically leaves the building on Saturday morning and will not be available to present her jackpot earnings to the Fissure, one of two options must be chosen. Either she should be encouraged to join in the capitalist card game with Tolliver in the hopes that her winnings then fall to the capitalist, or she should be encouraged to approach the singer with romantic intent. Her joining the card game is discouraged, as the most likely outcome is that she wins, taking both the capitalist's and Tolliver's winnings with her when she leaves on Saturday morning. In the event that her and the singer have sex, the big winner will reveal the location of her winnings to her, afterwards which the singer will seek out the winnings and steal them. She will then have them available at the beginning of the Montazuma 11 event. Notably, the big winner will resist this theft attempt unless she is absent from the hotel or is otherwise incapacitated. Typically, this can be achieved by having the singer get her intoxicated, eventually leading the big winner to approach the singer in the hotel foyer while intoxicated and getting thrown out of the hotel. Alternatively, there is a 7% chance that the big winner will naturally become injured during intercourse, and will not be able to get out of bed until after the Montazuma 11 event has taken place. The heiress then arrives at the hotel, shortly after which she is met by the banker and the capitalist, the three of them leaving to speak with the senator. During this meeting, the details of their involvement together become apparent, as the heiress claims that her late husband entered into a business deal with Tolliver prior to his death. According to her, her husband believed until his death that Tolliver had been secretly hiding profits from their joint business venture, which she believes is in excess of $75 million, stored away within the casino's central vault. That vault sat where the fissure is now, so it no longer exists. Tolliver has repeatedly denied her husband's claims, up to his death, and the heiress now desires to take what she believes is her fortune. The capitalist, the banker, and the senator have agreed to use their influence to force Tolliver to turn over the fortune, so long as they receive a substantial cut of it, for various reasons. The banker wants the money to buy out the controlling shares in his brother's railroad company, as well as cover for a money laundering scheme he is involved in with the entrepreneur. The senator wants the money to shore up his campaign for governor, which has recently become precarious due to Tolliver's support of his opposition. The capitalist seems to have no other motivation beyond personal hate for Tolliver, and his Las Vegas publication is in the middle of a multi-year-long smear campaign against Tolliver. While the more recent pieces did coincide with the election that Tolliver was actively involved in due to his support of the senator's opposition, it is currently not believed that these two are in any way related, and the cause of the capitalist's distaste for Tolliver remains unknown. The head researcher of 8947 filed a report in 2009 due to a slight variation in the conversation between Tolliver and the capitalist during their card game on Friday night. After losing the game, instead of angrily leaving the casino floor as per usual, the capitalist instead finished his drink, looked towards the space believed to have been occupied by Amelia Fitzwilliams during the game, and said, "It's fine, Alejandro. It's always fine. You always get what you want, don't you? Doesn't matter what it costs, you'll have yours, because nothing is ever your fault." During lunch service, the chef makes another pass at the server, this time cornering her in the kitchen and slapping her on the bottom. She will retaliate by slapping him, causing him to lash out at her violently. He must be called away before he can further harm her, as he cannot be allowed to harm her enough that would cause her to leave the hotel. Instead, he must only be allowed to harm her enough that she leaves to find the journalist. The server will then find the journalist, who consoles her. At the conclusion of their conversation, she agrees to carry a knife she took from the kitchen with her, and defend herself the next time she is aggressed by the chef. By 4 p.m. Friday, at the hotel pool, the big winner and the senator's wife discuss her encounter with the singer. The senator's wife discusses how, in her youth, she had briefly dated a man named Vincent Arians before he joined the British military during World War I. It is now known that this individual was an agent of an informant for the Chaos Insurgency, though the relevance of this is unknown. The groundskeeper, if having previously discovered the small vault, will continue to search through the basement levels of the hotel, eventually finding a door without a key, the secret vault. He spends time trying to pick the lock, but gives up when he is unable to do so. The entrepreneur and the banker meet in a smoking lounge, where the banker expresses concern about the presence of the journalist, who he claims had been making inquests into their past business dealings over the last few months. The entrepreneur agrees, but claims to be more concerned about the presence of the district attorney. The banker is by far the more anxious of the two, and discusses leaving the resort several times, but is rebuffed, as the entrepreneur tells him to remain calm and that he'll speak to a friend about handling the journalist, but to leave the DA alone so as to not involve additional law enforcement. Shortly afterwards, the entrepreneur makes a phone call to an outside line and briefly discusses how he believes that the journalist is informing on him and the banker, and that the journalist will soon go to the DA with his findings. Left unimpeded, he'll make this call at 5:29, but it's imperative that he be distracted enough that he makes the call after 5:34. If his call is to go through, he will arrange for 3 individuals to enter the hotel late Friday night, early Saturday morning, and kill the journalist, who must be present within the hotel on Sunday. However, if he attempts to make this call anytime after 5:34, the line will not connect, and he will not attempt to make the call again. The heiress and the capitalist spend the better part of the afternoon in her room engaging in intercourse, and after 3 hours, he'll leave to go to the casino floor. Here, he meets a handful of other guests, including the entrepreneur and the district attorney, who all begin to play cards. They are joined at 7:23 p.m. by the journalist, and they will remain at the card table until later in the evening. The big winner will also attempt to join this game if her money has not already been stolen by the singer, but since she has the highest chance to win the game, all parties involved must be influenced to reject her attempts to join. The district attorney's wife exits her room after evening prayers and leaves for the restaurant, during which she runs into the banker, proceeding to drop her belongings. He helps her pick them up, and she carries on out of the hotel. Shortly afterwards, the banker arrives at the district attorney's room and enters it using the key he had just stolen from her. He proceeds to investigate their room, looking for information suggesting the DA is investigating both him and the entrepreneur. This information does not exist, and as a result, he'll spend a significant amount of time during the night's card game looking for nothing in the room. Being unsuccessful in locating information pertaining to an investigation that is not taking place, the banker decides to lace a bottle of seltzer water on the DA's nightstand with an unknown poison. To retrieve this poison, he has to leave the room and return to his own, then come back to the DA's room to complete his task. It's important to monitor the DA during his time at the card table, while also watching the situation with the DA's wife and the banker. If at any point the DA has winnings greater than $1,000 in the card game, he will cash out before the next hand, and his wife will return to their room to get her bag. The timing of this is very important, because if the DA's wife does not encounter the banker before he laces the bottle of water, it is likely that the DA will be killed. His wife will not leave the casino until her husband is no longer playing cards, so in order to have her interrupt the banker's attempted poisoning, the DA must either reach $1,000 or run out of money with enough time to ensure his wife gets back to their room before the banker returns. Should she encounter the banker as he is leaving or returning to her room, he will be dissuaded and will flee, and will not attempt to kill the DA, allowing him to be present on Sunday with the money he had earned in the casino, if any. There is one strange scenario that can occur wherein the banker returns to the room while the DA's wife is in it, not realizing that she's there. There is generally one of two outcomes. Either the DA's wife becomes indignant at him and attacks him, forcing him to flee, or the banker makes a poorly conceived attempt to seduce her as a cover for his being in her room. Neither of these outcomes are ideal for the opportune scenario or the banker, with him being attacked causing him to leave the resort, and him attempting to seduce her nearly always resulting in her threatening to tell her husband. At that point, the banker will either flee, or more rarely, strangle her and then flee. The breakdown in the script following the latter of these events is catastrophic for the opportune scenario, second only to the public killing of the journalist later on in the same evening. There is, however, a third exceedingly rare outcome where the banker's attempt to seduce the DA's wife is successful, although the very brief encounter that follows has always resulted in the death of the banker from a heart attack and the DA's wife fleeing the hotel. At 8:30 p.m., Alejandro Tolliver enters the casino hall, and it is believed that he is accompanied by Amelia Fitzwilliams and the individual known as A. Shaw, implied from a reference made by the capitalist later in the evening, but this is uncertain due to the nature of their absence from the other entities. Tolliver takes time to walk around the casino floor and speak to many of the guests, before walking out to the floor proper. For the first of only 2 times throughout the 4-day period, Tolliver's voice can be heard. He cannot be addressed by Foundation staff, and speaks only to the other entities at the table, specifically to the capitalist. He'll ask to be dealt in, and will join the game, joined by a Mr. Jackson and Mr. Bates, the entrepreneur, the journalist, and the capitalist. The game usually plays out in one of 3 ways, with a very rare fourth. In one, the capitalist begins to play very aggressively, until eventually Tolliver wins the game when the capitalist goes all in on triple aces, and he shows a full house. This outcome has a 65.5% chance of occurring without outside interference, and is the most detrimental to the opportune scenario, as Tolliver will take the money and leave. In the second, the capitalist begins to play very aggressively, pushing out the entrepreneur first. The entrepreneur will then buy back into the game and push out the capitalist's flush with a straight flush. After the capitalist leaves the table, Tolliver will also leave, and the remaining winnings will go to the winner of the table, usually the journalist. This outcome has a 22.2% chance of occurring without outside interference, and is only slightly detrimental to the opportune scenario, requiring the discovery of the small vault. It is generally accepted that this is the safest scenario, as triggering the discovery of the small vault has a significantly higher chance of success than triggering the third outcome of this game. The third outcome occurs if Tolliver or the capitalist leave the table early, as both will cash out the majority of their own money, and the game will continue without them. However, without them both, the game cannot produce enough money to meet even the barest conditions of the opportune scenario. This outcome has an 11.2% chance of occurring, and occurs most frequently by accident due to outside interference, interrupting the capitalist or in some way disturbing him, causing him to become agitated and leaving the table. Finally, in the fourth outcome, the capitalist plays conservatively, and the journalist will bluff the entrepreneur out of most of his accumulated earnings before losing his winnings to Tolliver. The entrepreneur will go back and forth between Tolliver and the capitalist, eventually being pushed out, at which point he expresses his frustration at being bluffed twice and leaves the table with nothing. This leaves only the capitalist and Tolliver with the maximum possible money left at the table, and only has a 1.1% chance of occurring. In the event that this outcome occurs, Tolliver will call a brief recess, and the party will move to the bar while the table is reorganized. This event has occurred only a handful of times, and every time it does, a unique conversation takes place. This is unusual within the pattern of 8947, which typically follows a generally set pattern that allows for mostly minor deviation. All but one of these unique conversations have been short, while the most recent was considerably longer, and were provided transcripts of the conversations. In the first, the capitalist says that it seems they're right back here again, and try as he might, Tolliver can't seem to shake it. Tolliver orders a gin and ice with lime from the bar, while the capitalist orders straight whiskey. The two pause for 42 seconds before the capitalist says that he supposes they should get back to it, and Tolliver says that he supposes they should. In the second, the capitalist remarks that Tolliver has been in this business for some time now, and asks if he ever expected to be where he is now. Tolliver replies that he's right about one thing, that he's been in this business for some time. The capitalist laughs, and the two have a drink. In the third, the capitalist wonders how much longer Tolliver can keep it up. He knows that there's going to come a point where it breaks him. Tolliver just ignores him, ordering a drink, and the capitalist tells him to suit himself, as they can keep doing this as long as he wants. In the fourth, the capitalist says here they are again, same bar and same game of cards. He says that Tolliver has to be getting tired, but he replies that it's a good bar, a fine game, and what else could they ask for? The capitalist says that he knows what they're asking for, but Tolliver ignores him, instead ordering a drink and asking if he ever told him how he got started in business. His father, Giovanni Tolliver, was an immigrant to this country. He came here by ship, and after spending time in the cities out east, he scraped together whatever meager sum he could muster and set out west. He read stories about cowboys and Indians and hills full of gold, a land where a man could make something of himself. The romanticism of the West bit him, and he came out here seeking his fortune. He made something of himself, worked his fingers to the bones, and climbed the ladder at a small railway. He ran contracts on the Lincoln Line between Reno and Sacramento for 30 years, until his body broke. He scraped together enough to run a single engine, on lease from his former employer, and then worked until he couldn't work any longer, dying with more debt than dollars. The capitalist calls it a modern American tragedy, but Tolliver says that his father never complained, not even once, and might have even said he was happy. Tolliver's mother died when he was young, and he spent all of his growing days either at their humble mission school or with his father in his yard. He saw the work his father did, and what little his sweat was worth, deciding that that wasn't for him. The capitalist says that it's quite a story, and it's strange that he then somehow went on and conquered the world all the same. Tolliver replies that it wasn't the world, not even a corner of it. He has been profoundly fortunate, and his good luck has provided him with wealth beyond reason, but this isn't the world. It can't be their whole life. It wasn't the money that made his father happy, it was purpose. They can't stay the same forever. They have to change. The capitalist laughs and says that that's rich. He asks if that's the kid suddenly giving him some perspective, but Tolliver says that he thought he'd be satisfied with all the wealth his father never saw, but he was wrong. They're not meant to live like this, and their lives have to account for more than just numbers on a ledger. The capitalist quips that that's bold coming from the man with all the money, but Tolliver says that it doesn't last forever. The capitalist replies, however, that it might, and the two pause. He then says that they should get back to their game, but Tolliver says that he knows how this ends, and he doesn't have to do this. The capitalist agrees, saying that he doesn't have to do anything, and Tolliver wishes him luck. Saturday morning, around 1:30 a.m., the journalist leaves his hotel room, having returned there after the night's card game some hours earlier. He will spend some time trailing the capitalist and the banker, who spend much of the evening moving between various bars and the outdoor veranda. This is a critical block of time, as the journalist must be monitored and his position altered or obscured in some way if it seems likely he's about to be discovered by either of the two men, as the journalist being discovered will almost always lead to the banker fleeing the resort before the end of the night. Additionally, this is the point at which if the entrepreneur was able to make his phone call the previous night, 3 additional entities will appear, who will attempt to kill the journalist if they locate him during the night, and are almost always successful. In the event that these individuals do arrive, there are generally 4 possible outcomes, only one of which is acceptable to fully fulfill Montazuma 11, as it's the only outcome where the journalist survives the night and the hotel is not alerted. The other scenarios vary depending on whether or not the hotel patrons become aware of the assassination attempt, the worst outcome of which involves many of the patrons leaving before the end of the day. In the first outcome, the 3 men arrive to kill the journalist, spending the better part of the night hunting for him. They are unable to find him, likely due to heavy Foundation intervention in obscuring him and discreetly interrupting the pathing of the 3 assailants. If, however, Foundation personnel become too disruptive during this period, holding the 3 assailants up in an unbelievable way, which implies someone having greater knowledge of the scenario playing out than any of them would have otherwise, the journalist will begin to move in such a way that brings him closer to the assailants, always leading to an altercation between them, which the journalist loses. It's unknown why he does this, with one theory indicating that he's somehow aware of the presence of the 3 assassins and their apparent odd behavior due to Foundation intervention, leading him to believe he can take a fight with them, which he can't. If they can't find and kill him by 6 a.m., the 3 abandon the hotel and do not return. This is by far the rarest outcome, relying on the most Foundation intervention, and the effort and luck involved is the reason why the entrepreneur's phone call the night before must be disrupted. In the second outcome, the 3 men find and discreetly kill the journalist, meaning that he doesn't speak to the DA on Saturday night, and the DA leaves the hotel Sunday morning. This is slightly better than the other 2 outcomes, but the DA's presence on the final night is imperative to beginning the chain of events that begins the end phase of the protocol, and his absence significantly increases the Foundation's necessary contribution of gold bullion. In the third outcome, the 3 men attempt to kill the journalist, but create a disturbance among the guests in doing so and are unable to kill him. This typically involves the DA becoming aware of the disturbance and engaging with the assailants, and causing many of the resort's guests to leave by the end of the day, significantly reducing the available gold on Sunday night. On average, about 36% of guests will leave the hotel, which is still preferable compared to the last outcome. In the last outcome, the journalist is killed after a large disturbance, which almost immediately results in heavy police presence throughout the rest of the weekend, and a near-total abandonment of the rest of the weekend's proceedings. This is the worst possible outcome from the perspective of keeping Foundation contributions to Montazuma 11 low, as the only persons present on Sunday night will be a handful of hotel staff and police officers searching for the assailants, if they have not already been apprehended. The only way this scenario can in any way be salvaged is if the groundskeeper has located the secret vault and somehow translated the text and worked out how to perform the ritual described. The events that would need to have taken place earlier in the weekend combined with the obscure requirements to even access the secret vault, mean that this outcome is profoundly unlikely, only having been observed once. By 6:20, if the assailants haven't found and killed the journalist, they will leave, as hotel staff begin prepping for the morning's activities. Sometime after 8 a.m., if the big winner is still in possession of her jackpot winnings, she will leave the hotel. While this cannot be allowed to happen in the opportune scenario, she cannot be convinced to stay at this point, and steps must be taken to relieve her of her winnings earlier in the weekend. At breakfast, the DA's wife overhears part of a short conversation between the heiress and another hotel guest about her grievances with Tolliver and her late husband. At some point, the heiress and her friend will see the singer and invite her to join them. It's during this conversation that follows that the heiress makes a passing remark about Tolliver rarely leaving his penthouse, at which point the singer will inform her that Tolliver will be present for the conclusion of the weekend on Sunday. This conversation is important both for informing the heiress about Tolliver's presence on Sunday, which she will pass on to the other conspirators, and for raising the DA's wife's suspicions about the heiress's intentions, which she will pass on to her husband. There is a rare but important event that can take place after 9 a.m. on Saturday, wherein the groundskeeper is injured in his morning duties and is taken to a hospital in Laughlin. Strangely, the source of this injury is seemingly random, with him at different times falling and breaking bones in his arms, hips, and legs, receiving lacerations both minor and major while trimming hedges, and being concussed while cleaning exterior windows of the hotel. The randomness of these injuries has led some to theorize that some form of external force is acting upon the script of 8947, creating instability or uncertainty to disrupt attempts to satisfy Protocol Montazuma 11. It's standard practice to monitor the groundskeeper during this time frame in order to ensure he avoids injury, which concludes just before he leaves to take his lunch break, after which he spends much of the afternoon trying to get into the secret vault. During lunch service, the heiress dines with the senator and his wife in a private booth, where they discuss at length the senator's upcoming gubernatorial election campaign and Tolliver's interference in it. It is during this meeting that the heiress confesses her current situation to the two, that she is nearly penniless, subsisting entirely on a heavily overextended line of credit established by her late husband. Her father had sold much of his company prior to his death in order to cover expenses incurred due to a failed business deal with a local real estate group. The comparatively modest sum she was left in his will is all the money she has left, as her later husband had left all of his money to his 4 children from a previous marriage. Her inheritance money had quickly expired due to her lavish lifestyle, and the bills incurred on the assets she did inherit, namely her husband's Las Vegas estate, are beginning to outpace her ability to pay them off. By her account, she would be entitled to any additional money owed to her husband's company, of which she is now the sole employee, and is convinced that the money she believes is owed to her husband by Tolliver would be passed to the company and not his children. This is provably false, though, as the company was passed to her husband's oldest son upon his death, who was in Europe at the time of his father's passing and had not yet returned to the US to settle his affairs. Any money owed to the company would be passed to him as the executor of the estate, and then through him to his younger siblings, as noted in the will. More importantly, though, is that the debt, if it existed at all, likely had nothing to do with the production studio and was owed to one of her husband's other companies, all of which passed to his children upon his death. At the conclusion of the lunch service, the server confronts the chef about his previous advances, and it's important that both remain alive by the end of the interaction. It's not believed that the server's intention is to kill the chef, but on several occasions the discourse between them has become violent. The server draws her knife, and one of the two are killed. It's possible to avoid this by convincing any member of the restaurant staff or any of the patrons to intervene, though if not done carefully, this has a chance to further escalate the conflict. The most common outcome, though, is one where the chef apologizes for his actions, admitting that they were inappropriate and untoward. This outcome is not preferred, however, as it results in one or both of the two leaving the resort and not returning by Sunday. As such, it is generally considered more efficient to slightly antagonize one or the other prior to their confrontation, enough that neither of them are willing to reconcile, but also not so severely as to result in lethal violence. The singer also performs shortly after lunch in one of the lounges. She receives a phone call at the front desk informing her of her father being shot and sent to the hospital during a robbery in Louisiana earlier that day. The opportune scenario requires her to be in the hotel on Sunday night to sing for Tolliver, and receiving this phone call will cause her to leave shortly afterwards. While her set usually runs just long enough that she misses the phone call, causing a message to be left with her that she does not read before the end of the weekend, it is possible for her to conclude slightly earlier and receive the message. It is therefore preferable that the set run as long as possible, either by encouraging her to perform an encore or distracting the front desk clerk attempting to inform her of the phone call. During the afternoon, the groundskeeper will attempt to get into the secret vault, the door of which contains a complex locking mechanism requiring 3 separate keys, a translated cipher, and its 12-digit numerical output. The locations of all the items and information needed to access the vault are known, but require a significant amount of work to replicate. The groundskeeper will need to gain access to 2 different areas of the hotel he does not naturally have access to, a 7th floor administrative office and the 9th floor greenhouse. To get into the administrative office, he'll need to convince a secretary for the casino to allow him to enter the office. She's the only person in the office who will permit this, and encountering her is only possible during a 2-minute gap around 4:25 when she leaves to use the 7th floor washroom. She leaves the office at 5:05 and will not return afterwards. Once inside the office, the key is in an envelope marked to Tolliver's attention in the 3rd drawer from the top of the filing cabinet in the back corner of the office, behind 2 unused desks. Nobody in the office should be allowed to look at the name on the envelope, or else they will attempt to stop the groundskeeper from taking it. To get into the 9th floor greenhouse, he will need to enter through an open window on the exterior of the building, as the key to the greenhouse has never been found and is believed to be in the penthouse suite. Getting into that window will require that he shimmy across the exterior of the building, avoiding the detection of anyone standing in the garden below, and then find the loose window lock on the north side of the greenhouse. This will give him a roughly 61 centimeter entrance to climb through. The key is located in a lockbox behind a white lily in a gray flower pot near the center of the greenhouse. Any fall he experiences attempting to get into the greenhouse window will invariably be fatal, and over repeated attempts, this has happened numerous times. As a result, he has seemingly become unconsciously avoidant of this strategy, which has led Foundation game theorists to look for other ways to enter the greenhouse. The 3rd key is located beneath a drain at the bottom of one of the hotel pools. This is the simplest key to obtain, but as he is not a strong swimmer, this key has been notoriously difficult to collect. It usually requires the groundskeeper to try and convince other patrons to swim down and get the key for him. He will also need to be introduced to Miriam Marshall, a traveling nurse, who has studied cryptography as a hobby and can work out the complex mechanical cipher within the locking mechanism. Miss Marshall is only present at the hotel on Saturday, as she checks in Saturday morning and leaves Sunday morning. This leaves very little time for the groundskeeper to interact with her, as regardless of their progress, she cannot be persuaded to stay. The cipher requires a code phrase, omne debe mutare, meaning, everything must change. This phrase is located within a logbook on the same basement level as the secret vault door. The groundskeeper cannot simply be given the output of the cipher, as attempting to do so, even subtly, will result in the 2 becoming incapable of seeing or interacting in any way with the person trying to provide the code. This will also cause the groundskeeper specifically some considerable distress, as from his perspective, the person he was engaging with will have abruptly ceased to exist. If this occurs, he will almost always immediately give up his attempt to get into the secret vault. Because of the complexity of trying to get him to collect the items necessary to enter the secret vault, the danger the task puts him in, and his growing unwillingness to do so, it is generally considered not worth the effort to try and enter the secret vault. A number of other outcomes, such as opening the small vault, the big winner's jackpot being stolen, optimal card game resolutions, etc., are all usually sufficient to fulfill Protocol Montezuma 11, and the contents of the secret vault require additional intense manipulation of the groundskeeper and several other hotel patrons to see any payout. While the potential gold payout can be significant, the more important value in opening the secret vault is further exploration into Tolliver's occultist background and greater intentions. The contents within the secret vault no longer exist, and only manifest when the groundskeeper or another entity enter the vault to remove them. In the 4 instances wherein the groundskeeper successfully opened the secret vault, the following items have been recovered from it. A book entitled The Way Under the Water, written by an L.M.L. Morrissey, believed to be a fictional depiction of a god sleeping under the ocean, and describing ways to pay homage to the god. A book entitled Saison, written by French author Etienne Dumarche, and since the groundkeeper does not read French, the text of the book is unknown. A book entitled Ash and Rebirth, written by Russian author Gavril Pervolzhin, which can be translated by a guest, his wife, or their 2 sons. This has been difficult to achieve, and thus far has only revealed that the text combines elements of Orthodox Christian mysticism with folk tales and alchemical symbolism. The text is structured as a series of parables and dialogues between a dying sage, the Fading One, and a mysterious otherworldly being, the Weaver of Veils, who guides the sage towards understanding the transcendence of mortal existence. A book entitled Oric Vite by 17th century Greek author Yannis Krypteron. The text is written entirely in Greek, and there are no known patrons of the hotel who can read Greek. A collection of papers believed to be a copy of the Eschaton manuscript, a series of writings by an anonymous 11th century author speculated to have originated in either the Levant or Southern Europe. It's a deeply cryptic and ancient text believed to have been transcribed by an unnamed sect of Gnostic mystics detailing the apocalyptic concept of transformation through fire as the ultimate purifier. A book entitled Chrysalis of Night, written by 19th century Hungarian author Carolina Szegedy, the contents of which are unknown, as the groundskeeper cannot be compelled to open it, complaining that it feels wrong. A book entitled Oric Vite, written by 16th century German author and self-proclaimed alchemist Heinrich von Stahl. This book can be translated by another hotel patron and describes the mystical properties of gold, not as a mere element, but as a divine substance capable of transforming flesh and spirit. The book claims that by consuming living gold, gold transmuted through secret alchemical processes, one can attain physical immortality and spiritual transcendence. It combines dense alchemical recipes with cryptic rituals involving lunar phases, human blood, and rare herbs. We're given an excerpt from this book, which reads, "As the final breath of the ritual escapes into the ether, and the golden essence suffuses the flesh, the mortal vessel shall crumble, giving way to the eternal form. No longer bound by decay or time, the adept shall rise anew, transformed into a being of living gold, a luminous conduit of divine perfection. The veins shall flow with molten aurum, warm and unyielding, and the skin shall gleam with the brilliance of 1,000 suns. The eyes, now orbs of crystalline amber, shall perceive not as man, but as the eternal does, piercing the veil of time and space. The heart, stilled in its mortal cadence, shall beat no more, yet it shall thrum with the resonance of the cosmos itself. Beware, for such a gift is not without its weight. The burden of eternity lies not in the years, but in the unrelenting brilliance, the burning purity of gold, which allows no shadow, no retreat into darkness. Once made whole, the immortal shall walk forever in light, unyielding and alone." there's also a collection of various alchemical tools and supplies, including all but one of the ingredients needed to perform a ritualistic transformation described in Oric Vite. Each of these ingredients is labeled according to their name given in the text, but additional information has been provided by whomever assembled the ingredients. While the original ingredients cannot be tested, the descriptions provided have informed some understanding of their purpose in the ritual. There's Philosopher's Mercury, a liquid metal alloy composed of mercury and trace elements. Oric Seed, a crystalline structure formed from gold, developed through prolonged exposure to concentrated sunlight. Molten Crown, a liquid phase gold alloy procured off-site. Golden Myrrh, resin infused with colloidal gold during pyrolysis that demonstrated enhanced aromatic and combustive qualities. Phoenix Feather, a specimen representing symbolic avian anatomy used in combustion studies, which includes carbonized organic matter. Breath of Aurum, a vaporized mixture of cinnabar, elemental gold, and organic compounds such as ambergris produced through sublimation under controlled heat. Blood of a Saint, a single drop of human blood, which is the only ingredient missing from the collection. Heart of Quartz, rose quartz shaped to mimic anatomical features. Salt of Eternity, a finely ground mineral residue hypothesized to derive from meteorites which displays unique fluorescence under ultraviolet light. Lunar Ash, combustion byproduct of wormwood and other botanicals collected under specific lunar phenomena. Elixir of Soul, a distilled mixture of botanical extracts, honey, and other organic compounds notable for its refractive golden hue and energy release potential. Echo of Thunder, rainwater collected during thunderstorms. Dragon's Breath, a gaseous compound containing sulfur dioxide, ethanol, and an unidentified proprietary catalyst. Veil of Orichalcum, a fabric woven from an unidentified golden alloy thread that's unusually soft. And Circle of Binding Runes, a geometrical diagram inscribed with gold-based ink. The ritual described in Oric Vite can be performed by the groundskeeper, the result of which is the total transformation of his entire body into gold. This is believed to be a failure of the intended alchemical process, which describes a transformative experience that elevates the individual into a being made of gold, but not bound by it, and implies the resultant subject would still be ambulatory and conscious. It's likely that the failure stems from a missing ingredient, the blood of a saint, which the groundskeeper substituted for his own blood in the only recorded performance of the ritual. Two events of significant importance occur on Saturday night, the first of which is around 9:15, when the journalist seeks out and arranges a meeting with the DA. They endeavor to find a location where they will not be disturbed, and while this is usually successful, there have been several occasions where their conversation is overheard by a courier in the entrepreneur's employ, who then reports back to him. It is only at this point that the entrepreneur becomes unsettled enough to flee the hotel, notably without informing the banker. This is understandably disastrous for the proper implementation of Montazuma 11, but is not the absolute worst-case scenario. The banker still has access to a sizable portion of gold on his own, and while he will find the entrepreneur's absence unusual, he does not have enough time at this point to come to the realization that he has been abandoned. In the meeting between the journalist and the DA, the journalist lays out the results of his investigation to the DA, stating that he received an anonymous tip detailing allegations of financial indiscretions perpetrated by the entrepreneur against his brother's company, Trans-American Railroad. He had been funneling a significant amount of wealth intended for the development of a new northern line into a survey company owned by a fake persona managed by the banker. That money, believed to be in excess of $450,000, was in the process of being laundered at the Spirit Mountain Casino, and had been for several weeks prior. The DA confirms that during his initial meeting with both the entrepreneur and the banker, the latter had not intended the former to make an appearance at the hotel that weekend, and seemed somewhat anxious about his presence, likely because it threatened to expose what was an otherwise discreet money laundering scheme. After some deliberation, the DA will make a phone call to the Clark County Sheriff's Office and arrange for the arrival of uniformed officers to arrest the entrepreneur and the banker the following evening, which is the soonest these officers could arrive. There have been, on occasion, instances where the journalist is unable to convince the DA, usually due to the DA having not interacted with the entrepreneur and the banker on Thursday, and thus not being suspicious of them at the start. In this instance, the police will not be called, and the journalist, frustrated about this outcome, will seek out the server shortly after this meeting. Ostensibly, he desires to meet up with her in the hopes that she has heard anything about the entrepreneur or the banker that could help his investigation, though she has not. It's during this meeting that the truth of their relationship is revealed, that the server is the widow of one of the journalist's former classmates, who died during the First World War. The journalist, who was an army photographer during the war, had been asked by him to look after the server if he didn't return from Europe. It's possible then that the journalist took the lead on the entrepreneur and banker tip because he knew it would send him to Nevada, which he could use as an opportunity to check in on her. If the journalist has not been able to convince the DA of their crimes, he will leave the hotel the following morning. During the conversation with the server, he will try to convince her to leave as well, offering travel back to New York and help finding gainful employment there. The server will not desire to leave if she has made amends with the chef, but considering this is considered a less than ideal outcome, then it is more likely that she will be inclined to go. Because her presence on Sunday night is the trigger for initiating Montazuma 11, she cannot be allowed to leave, and several tactics have been used to prevent this. One is convincing her that the journalist is at the hotel to pursue her romantically, which can be difficult as there's no evidence to support it, but has been effective, especially if her and the chef's work relationship has become especially toxic. Another is to delay the journalist's arrival to her room that evening, since she lives in the on-site staff housing, which locks at 10 p.m. He'll be unable to enter that evening and will depart the next morning. At 11:30, the capitalist, the senator, the entrepreneur, and the heiress will meet in the entrepreneur's suite on the casino floor. This meeting is the penultimate major event before the activation of Montazuma 11, and requires very little setup aside from ensuring all 4 participants are still in the hotel on Saturday night. There are several different variations of the conversation that follows, with all of them leading more or less to the same outcome. The heiress wants the money she believes she is owed. The senator is willing to assist so long as he is given part of the fortune as a campaign donation. The entrepreneur seems generally ambivalent but seems to enjoy the drama of it all, and desires some of the money to aid in covering up his own money laundering scheme, and the capitalist seems to desire little else than ruining Tolliver's reputation. The subject of the capitalist's antipathy towards Tolliver is another one of the enduring mysteries surrounding 8947. Little is known about their early interactions, but it is known that one of the first major benefactors of the capitalist Paradise City Gazette was one of Tolliver's investment companies. It was not until 1913 that the paper began to become more critical of Tolliver specifically, taking aim at his business dealings in Nevada and associations with anti-war activists. For his part, Tolliver rarely spoke about the paper or the capitalist, only being quoted once saying, "I have met the man and found him well. I cannot say he felt the same." We're given a transcript of one of these conversations, in which the entrepreneur says that they're all in agreement, that they'll put the screws to the bastard, and by Sunday night, he hands over their money all nice and neat. The capitalist calls him a soft-headed drunk and says that they don't put the screws to him, they break him. If he won't hand it over, they make sure he wishes he had. He's smart, but he's not invincible. The senator, however, disagrees and says that this cannot look like a shakedown. If this turns bad, it'll be his neck in the noose, not theirs. He cannot and will not be seen strong-arming a man as well-connected as Tolliver over money. The capitalist tells him not to get sanctimonious on them now, as he wants this just as bad as they do, or more even. He's got precious political ambitions to keep alive. The senator, however, says that he needs funding, and there's a difference between that and an outright robbery. The heiress tells him to call it whatever makes him comfortable, but just to make sure the money ends up in her hands. The entrepreneur laughs, as if hearing a joke, and he's clearly drunk. The senator asks the heiress if she's certain the money is in the vault, to which she says that her husband never lied to her. He then says that they're still missing something. Tolliver is a stubborn man, but he's not stupid, so they need to be sure he feels cornered. He won't crack unless he knows there's no way out. The capitalist says that that's why they do it in public on Sunday night. He'll be in the Grand Lounge, as he always is, and the singer will be there to sing for him. Drinks, cards, pretending he's still king of the world. They make sure he has nowhere to run. The entrepreneur then brings up that man that Tolliver has been spending time with, and the room falls into a brief silence. The capitalist says that he's strange, not local, and the senator says that something about him feels off. The heiress is incredulous that they're afraid of some assistant, but the capitalist says that that man is no assistant. The entrepreneur then says that there have been whispers, but he doesn't elaborate. The senator then remarks that that's not their only problem, as Tolliver's granddaughter is here, and they have to consider if she's a liability. If things turn ugly, he doesn't want an innocent girl caught in the middle of it. The capitalist just says that that's up to Tolliver, but they'll make sure things don't turn ugly. The senator then says that there's one last thing, the DA, and the room goes silent again. He says that if the DA catches wind of this, they're finished, and the capitalist says that they'll keep him distracted. He doubts he's above a well-placed bribe. In the single instance where the groundskeeper managed to complete the ritual in the secret vault, it occurred shortly after midnight on Sunday. There is little other data on how quickly this ritual could be completed. At around 2:12 a.m., the front desk clerk will go on break and leave the front desk unattended. It is during this time frame that a highly unlikely event may occur. The front desk phone will begin ringing, and will continue to ring until roughly 30 seconds before the desk clerk returns. No other persons pass through the hotel lobby during this time, as all the patrons are either in their rooms or at the casino, so nobody else will answer the call. This call has occurred 3 times since the Foundation began observing 8947, with each additional iteration of the call seemingly picking up where the former had left off. The phone did actually survive the fire and remains at the front desk. Upon picking up the receiver, a voice can be heard on the other end of the line. The voice is undetermined and is only barely audible, but a conversation can be made out between them and another person, although the second person cannot be heard aside from muted murmuring. The audible person is notably not Tolliver or anyone else at the hotel, and this call and its contents have been studied at length by research staff without much success. It's believed that this phone call is directed at Foundation staff specifically, though how that is possible and where the call would have originated from are all unknown. We're given a few transcripts of the calls, and it starts with the unknown voice saying that he heard a story one time from a traveling Mamluk when they were out in the desert, a queer story. He had been silent for most of the evening, just listening to their companions talk. Something in the conversation, maybe the way the merchant spoke about wealth, or maybe the way the individual's fingers had lingered too long over the weight of his own coin. He waited until the fire had burned low, and then told him this story. There are many gods in this world, he said. Some demand blood, some demand devotion, but there is one god that does not ask, it only waits. The individual felt his own throat go dry at this point, as dry as the man's words, or worse. The man looked past him, as if he was looking at someone out in the dunes, and continued, saying that he once served a man who had no god but greed. He spoke of his master, a man who built his fortune on the suffering of others, whose wealth grew like rot upon the bones of the desperate. He spoke of gold counted by candlelight, of ledgers inked in misery, and he spoke of something else, something that watched. At first it was nothing, he said, a shape in the corner of a mirror, a flicker in the glass, but he felt it. He knew. He would wake in the night, sweating, whispering of something standing at the foot of his bed. The richer he became, the darker the corners grew. He lined his doors with silver, he burned incense, thinking he could drive it away. But it was not something that could be bribed or banished. The Mamluk paused then, his gaze shifting to behind the individual who fought the urge to turn. He continued, saying that one night his master's servants woke to find his bed empty. No doors had been opened, no footprints marked the floor. His wealth remained, stacked neatly where he had left it, but he was gone. The individual asked if they ever found him, and they think they all knew the answer before he gave it. The other voice on the line then says something, and the individual replies, "Yes, very nearly." The Mamluk had said that they found nothing except for a single coin, one that had never been there before, a coin that did not shine, but instead swallowed the light. The god of greed does not sit upon a throne. It does not demand temples or prayer. It does not ask for love. It only waits, watching you count, watching you weigh, watching you want. And when you have given it enough, when you have let it coil around your soul, let it pull you deeper into its grasp, it comes to collect. The individual says that he could feel the weight of his own coin purse at his hip, as if something was pulling on it from below. He did not look down. The other voice then says something, and the individual says that he didn't, as he didn't want to know. Around 8 a.m., several individuals will leave the hotel, if they have been compelled to do so through various interactions over the weekend. While it is not impossible to dissuade some of these guests from leaving, once they have signed out in the hotel's logbook, they can no longer be interacted with. There are several contingencies available in case high-value persons attempt to leave at this stage, but they are all exceedingly difficult, and it is considered much easier to make sure they do not get to this point in the first place. At around 9:05 a.m., another one of the groundskeepers will find the transfigured body of the groundskeeper in the basement. He and several other members of the resort staff will spend the next several hours moving the body up into the hotel atrium. During breakfast this morning, the capitalist and the heiress will sit together with two other socialites. While the heiress carries the conversation, the capitalist seems noticeably distracted throughout. Additionally, the DA and his wife eat with the singer, with the DA's wife confiding in her that she is a big fan of her father, who performed a gospel service at their church several years before. They speak for some time, and the singer promises to sing "Down in the River to Pray" at the night's performance. It's not required for the DA's wife to make this request, but adding this song to the end of the singer's set slightly shortens the time between the confrontation with Tolliver and the beginning of the Montazuma 11 event. It is a marginal decrease, but there are several persons at the hotel who will try to leave once the confrontation reaches its zenith, and it is possible to delay them enough that they cannot make it to the edge of the resort grounds by the time the activation event begins. Just before 2 p.m., the capitalist will assemble a group of men, including a Las Vegas nightclub owner and a prominent semi-professional boxer. He'll provide them all with weapons, generally bully clubs and batons, and he'll procure a handgun, explaining that they'll be confronting Tolliver in the evening about a major alleged theft that has transpired. He will lie and claim that law enforcement has been called, but in order to avoid letting Tolliver escape before they arrive, he and some others will perform a citizen's arrest. The men in the room are just there to mitigate hotel security if they try to assist Tolliver in evading justice. Around 2:35, the journalist will speak to the server one more time, warning her about a potential confrontation between the police and both the entrepreneur and the banker that evening. He tells her to try to keep her distance, as he does not know whether or not the event will escalate. The server will ask who all is implicated, and the journalist idly remarks that there may be other hotel staff involved, but he does not know the full extent of it. It's clear from this conversation that the journalist is talking about the banker's employees working to launder the money, but the server is thinking about the conversation between the chef and the entrepreneur during dinner on Thursday. Her presence at the lounge Sunday evening, then, is likely in the hopes of watching the chef get implicated for money laundering. By 4 p.m. on Sunday, there is very little that can be done to change the outcome of the weekend, as most of the events that have been put in motion cannot be altered and only need to be resolved. None of the highest value individuals at the hotel will seek to leave after the morning block, and no other major events of significance take place between the conversation between the journalist and the server and the end of dinner service. Dinner service proceeds as normal, without any interruptions, and notably missing from the dining hall is the heiress, who spends a significant amount of time in the evening getting dressed and putting on makeup prior to leaving for the lounge at 8:45. At 8:52, the door to the penthouse opens, signaling the beginning of the Montazuma 11 activation event. At this point, there are 3 possible outcomes. In the first, the conditions of Montazuma 11 have not been fulfilled, a state known as an uncontrolled activation. During an uncontrolled activation, the fissure beneath 8947 will begin to expand at 10:51 and will not stop until midnight. This is the most disastrous outcome and has been experienced comparatively few times since the Foundation began monitoring 8947. Each instance was the result of the absence of the server from the lounge on Sunday night, either due to being compelled to leave with the journalist, being dead, or having left the hotel after the journalist or another prominent figure's death on Saturday. In the second scenario, the conditions of Montazuma 11 have been fulfilled, but there is not enough gold present within 8947 to satisfy the conditions of the protocol, a state known as a controlled activation. During a controlled activation, the fissure will only begin expanding once it is clear that there is not enough gold within the resort to fulfill the required amount. When the ritual described in this document's containment procedures takes place, and that quantity is satisfied, the fissure will immediately cease expanding. This has been the most common outcome historically, though the rate at which it occurs has been steadily decreasing over time, as 8947 game theory teams have been continuously optimizing the outcome. In the third scenario, the conditions of Montazuma 11 have been fulfilled, and there is enough gold present within 8947 to satisfy the conditions of the protocol, a state known as a resolved activation. The fissure does not expand in this scenario. At the end of all 3 scenarios, regardless of outcome, a fire breaks out within the hotel and casino and wholly consumes it. This fire is fully incorporeal and cannot harm living creatures, though the entities do appear to be burning alive throughout. Once this fire has burned out, the entities within will vanish and the activation event will end. We're then provided a timeline of events for the Montazuma 11 activation event, which is generally accurate during all 3 scenarios, although it wildly diverges near the end of the first scenario due to the absence of the server. In the event that most of the persons in the hotel have left, Tolliver will go to the lounge alone and sit there until shortly after 10:51. He will rise and walk to the edge of the fissure, formerly the location of the casino vault, and disappear sometime shortly afterwards. On one occasion, he could be heard saying, "Strange, I thought it would be different than this," before vanishing. In the timeline, the singer begins her set in the lounge at 9 p.m. Most of the prominent figures within 8947 arrive ahead of time, including all of the conspirators, the journalist, and the DA and his wife. At 9:03, Tolliver arrives, where he is greeted by the singer and the band. His entrance is met by applause from the crowd, and he is ushered onto the stage, where he offers a few polite introductions and thanks the crowd for attending the gala event. He takes his place at his table alongside, presumably, his granddaughter and A. Shaw. The singer and the lounge band proceed to play their set for roughly the next hour and 20 minutes, always playing the exact same set list, with the single exception of Down to the River to Pray, if requested by the DA's wife. As the band reaches the end of the set list, the capitalist will get up from his table and join the heiress and the entrepreneur at his. Seeing this, the senator will also rise to join them. At the conclusion of the set, the 4 conspirators will make a show of moving together towards Tolliver's table to make their public confrontation. This initial confrontation rarely changes, and were provided an example transcript. As they approach, Tolliver remarks that a lady should not keep company with desperate men, to which the heiress loudly responds that a thief should not keep company with honest men. The other entities turn to look at the sound of the disruption, and the senator raises his voice, stating that he sees this as an opportunity for Tolliver to clear his name before all these people and show them what's in his vault. There is a murmur in the room, and Tolliver exhales as if amused. The capitalist says that it's simple. If he opens it and there's nothing there, they owe him an apology. The entrepreneur says that it's a hell of a thing to find out you're not a crook in front of a crowd. Tolliver asks what they expect to find inside the vault of a casino, and the senator says that they expect to see the money, the heiress's husband's hard-earned gains. Tolliver casually remarks on all this scheming just for some money, and the heiress says that it's $75 million that belongs to her. Tolliver replies that he's certain her of all people would think such a debt would be owed to her, if it existed. Her husband was a good man, honest with his money when he had it, but he only knew him when he didn't, and he certainly didn't give it to Tolliver. The murmuring turns to whispering, and the senator appears nervous, as the heiress calls him a liar. She says that she has the receipts, and knows that he has the money. Tolliver calmly replies that that money would no doubt go to his children, if it existed, but there is no such sum in his possession. The entrepreneur loudly clamors for him to prove it by opening the vault, and if he's telling the truth, he'll buy him a beer himself. Tolliver asks if they really want to do this, seemingly addressing the question to the capitalist specifically, and he replies that they want an answer. The conspirators will then lead Tolliver out of the lounge and towards the casino floor, followed by a large gathering of spectators. Almost all of the notable players are in the group, including the server and the journalist. The group arrives at the casino floor around 10:30, and as the capitalist and his gang get into formation in front of the group, several members of casino security, notified ahead of time of what was transpiring, take up positions around the casino floors and on the walkways. The group stops just short of the Fissure in the center of 8947, in the location where the vault used to be. There is the sound of jingling keys, likely coming from Tolliver, and he tells the capitalists that they can't stay the same forever. They all have to change. The capitalist replies that he doesn't know what he's talking about, and Tolliver says that he's afraid that he wouldn't. He says that it's just him then, and tells them that there's still time to walk away. The heiress orders him to open it, and he does. A heavy mechanism is triggered, and large steel elements can be heard sliding against each other. A moment later, there is a much heavier sound as something is released, and the sound of the vault door sliding open. The senator asks what the hell this is, and the conspirators take a cautionary step back. People in the back of the mob push forward to try and look inside, and begin asking what's in there, clamoring that it's their money that Tolliver stole from them. The conspirators are at a loss for words. The entrepreneur vomits and faints, and the heiress begins to push her way back into the crowd, openly weeping. The capitalist asks what this is, demanding Tolliver tell them what he's done. Tolliver calmly replies that he told him. It can't just be this. The capitalist pulls out his firearm and aims it at the vault behind Tolliver. A shot rings out, and then another, and hotel security swarms down into them as the capitalist's gang surge forward, now including a large contingent of persons armed with whatever they can grab from around the casino floor. The senator is pushed to the ground, and elsewhere in the crowd, the journalist attempts to push forward, searching for the server. Audible through the growing cries of the crowd is Tolliver, speaking to someone else who cannot be seen. While it is hard to make out, it seems as if he says, "The room, take her, and safe." A riot breaks out as casino security attempts to push back the mob, many of whom now try to beat them back with improvised weapons. More gunshots are heard, and pandemonium breaks out. This fight, while chaotic, tends to follow similar trends on repeat occurrences, always reaching its resolution right at 10:51, regardless of whether or not the server is in the crowd. Throughout the din, the journalist calls out for the server. The server, seeing an opportunity, moves quickly through the mob towards the chef, who is standing near the front of the group next to the capitalist. As she approaches, she pulls out her knife, staring at him. As she closes the distance, she makes one final leap forwards and extends the knife out in front of her. At the last minute, the chef sees her and turns sideways. She stumbles and falls forwards, hitting the ground right at the edge of the fissure, but not before the knife sticks into something invisible at around waist height. Tolliver shouts the word no repeatedly, and the room grows silent, all attention turning towards the vault. There is the sound of panicked gasping, and then something small and soft hitting the ground, before slipping off the edge of the fissure and falling down into the dark. Tolliver begs for this not to happen again, and the ground begins to shake. There is the sound of something burning inside the vault. The capitalist laughs and says that he just can't believe it. A low rumbling sound emanates from beneath them, and a thick green haze begins to rise from within the fissure, quickly approaching the top. Tolliver quietly states that it's here, and at 10:51, Protocol Montazuma 11 begins. Whew. Obviously, there's a hell of a lot of things going on here, and I picture djkaktus looking like Charlie from Always Sunny in Philadelphia next to his conspiracy board while writing this whole thing. I'm not going to try to summarize all of the various plot elements going on through this article, but I'll give a brief summary of the major points. The Anomaly is a weekly cycle of events that takes place at an abandoned hotel and casino that closed up after a major fire and earthquake in 1922 during a big gala event. Now, 256 entities reappear there every week from Thursday to Sunday, carrying out the events as if it was still 1922. It's notably not a time loop, insofar as the Foundation can actually interact with these entities and change certain events, to a degree. It's actually very important that they do manipulate some events, because at the end of the cycle, the entities will offer up any wealth they have to the big fissure located underneath the structure, and if they don't have enough, the fissure grows bigger and spits out some toxic fog. The Foundation can throw their own gold at the problem if it comes to that, but they'd really rather not, as the entity's gold comes back every week. Most of the article then concerns an ideal cycle, in which the Foundation manipulates key individuals and events to ensure that the ritual at the end goes off without a hitch, and enough wealth is thrown in to keep the fissure from growing. Foundation game theorists are continually working to experiment and find out new ways to manipulate entities and events in order to make the whole thing problem-free, and in theory they might eventually get it to where it's like clockwork, except that sometimes things just randomly go wrong. This seems to stem from the fact that there's a certain level of awareness amongst some of the entities, such as the groundskeeper becoming increasingly afraid of falling to his death, as well as the fact that Tolliver, the owner of the hotel, and possibly the capitalist, seem to be aware of the fact that they're part of a cycle. Tolliver is notably not one of the entities, and is never actually visible, along with his granddaughter and another mysterious individual known as A. Shaw. The cycle comes to a head on Sunday night when 4 conspirators confront Tolliver about some money that's supposedly in his vault. When they force him to open it, they are utterly shocked by what's in there, although we're not told at all what it is, as the Foundation can't see into the vault anymore. During this, the server accidentally stabs what seems to be Tolliver's granddaughter, and this is a pivotal event for the ritual, as the ritual won't occur if this doesn't happen. I'd rather not delve into too much speculation about everything going on here, but it seems that Tolliver became party to a god of greed, The exact nature of their relationship is unknown, although he seems to imply that perhaps he got all his wealth through a deal with this deity, and later came to regret it, feeling a lack of purpose. It's quite possible that he was funneling large amounts of money towards the god, as the heiress's $75 million was missing, assuming that it was ever there. Something caused the fissure to break out and the cycle to begin, and signs point to it being related to the blood of a saint, the only ingredient missing from the alchemical ritual found in the secret vault. It could be that the blood of Tolliver's innocent granddaughter was enough to enact some sort of ritual that went wrong, but it's still unclear who A. Shaw is or how he fits into the scheme of things. Obviously, it seems that the Foundation is continuing to pour gold into this god of greed, and there are subtle machinations that continue to plague their operation here, causing them to put in some more of their actual gold rather than the entity's recycled gold. It's certainly an incredibly complex article, especially with a whopping 72 footnotes, but the situation across the 4 days really comes alive with all the different characters, their motivations, and the Foundation's observations and interactions. It's similar in some ways to SCP-7819, No Vacancy, in which it showcases how the Foundation tackles some of these extreme locations, and all the ins and outs of working with complex anomalies. Really though, I think the most fascinating character here is the groundskeeper, who seems to be able of being manipulated into doing just about anything, up to and including completing a complex alchemical ritual and turning himself into gold. Hopefully, they eventually figure out a way to prod him towards solving the whole thing, defeating the deity of greed, and rescuing the granddaughter, but maybe that's just wishful thinking.